Any others that you can think of? Yeah.
Would it indirectly affect the people's impression of their government? I mean, you have Americans in food civilization who probably can't support themselves. I mean, I would think that it would kind of affect the legitimacy of the.
Yeah, great point. So an unintended consequence, a perspective of one's own government, and then possibly a weakening. Yes?
I was might be wrong, but I was thinking of like, how it could possibly affect children and not understanding where did this mass amount of food is coming from, and wondering when it's gone, like where that food is.
Great question. Great question. Yeah. Andy?
I think that people distributing the food themselves get an enormous amount of power, and how does that power affect them and their status in the community where they decide who gets it and who doesn't?
Great question. Complex. Yes?
I would say like the people receiving the food, like they would become more dependent on things that are being handed to them versus like trying to fix their local economy or for what they need.
What might be the next? What might be the sort of the next steps that flow from that reality?
Well, like if they're just depending on other people and keep giving them free meals, like once they run out, they're gonna be like, okay, what do I do now? And they have to, I don't know, try to create a better life for themselves also, and try to work for it and build up their economy around them and their society.
Yeah, great point.
I was just saying, when she was saying the expression, I reminds you of give a man a fish, he eats for days, give a man a fish, he eats for lifetimes. You're not teaching them anything, you're just giving them free food.
Anyone else? A possible unintended consequence? Yes?
Where does the packaging go?
Huge question. Huge question. I love that question. And you see that play out now in Haiti where, because there are fewer, there just aren't things aren't hidden on the fact that packaging is right out there from a culture that had a long history of biodegradable reality. And you see the packaging now that is just kind of there. I love when, has anyone ever seen online, there's something called the story of stuff? It's really interesting, and it says when we throw things away, there is no away. But we just kind of we don't have to see it as much here, but you sure see it. Yeah.
One of the most damaging things that happens, I think, is the change that goes on in the thinking of the people. We can't take care of ourselves. We have to depend on other people.
Yeah.
And that's very damaging.
Yeah.
I think also reinforcing the stereotype of the U.S. Everybody has, which comparatively we do.
Yeah.
But I think reinforcing that stereotype of we're needy, they're prosperous.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes too, when we're here in the States, as you say, it's a lovely, lovely thought. But when I think about the same resources that bought the food, that then purchased whatever means to transport it
Yeah.
from here to Haiti, and what that could do in a local economy,
Yeah.
it's tricky.
I wonder if we just use that same scenario, and whether it's food going to Haiti or in our own community, a food bank, or what might be an antidote? What might be another way to have that intended impact, that intended consequence, be lived out in a way that was a mutual gift for all involved? What might be different about that scenario? Yes?
Picking up on the comment about resources, what if you took the same amount of resources that you purchase the food here in the States and somehow try to develop partnerships with farmers in Haiti, and it may be that they have the food, they just can't get it there, it may be that they need tools or what have you, but develop partnerships so that the objective is to not only provide the food, but also to create a system that can be sustained after your food is eaten up.
Yeah. Yes.
Like you were talking about earlier, a process that requires more communication
Mm-hmm.
is difficult, but I think it would be better if like governments can work together to like if the strong government helps the weaker government to help build their economy instead of like say the strong government of the U.S. directly giving things to the people. It ruins their nationalism because then they don't appreciate like their government and they want what we have instead of trying to build on what they have there.
It's a great point. Andy.
About instead of assuming we know what they need, actually asking them what they need.
And what does that require? Talking about partnerships, and what does that logistically require? Whether it's a community in Philadelphia or in Haiti.
One thing it requires that Americans often forget is it requires that you know the language.
That's a great point. Great point. It's hard enough to, I find sitting around our table at Beyond Borders, and most people are bilingual in English and Haitian Creole, and I'm one of the more pathetic Haitian Creole language learners, but I work really hard at it. But even when we're all speaking English together, we mean different things by what we say, much less another language. Yeah.
Another thing is many charity people either asking for charity or people giving, it's the people give it out of guilt and then can't feed their kids that night for dinner. It's like you can't get to be able to give within your own means and cause.
Yeah, that's a great point. One of the things I think what we're seeing and what we know intuitively is that longer term work requires relationships first. And relationships are not easy. Forming relationships are not easy. And I think it requires a different level. It requires us to see each other as fully human. There's a beautiful book that Jean Vanier, who is the founder of the L'Arche community, wrote. And it's a book called Becoming Human. And it is one of my favorite books. I read it about every 6 months. And the book talks about the movement we need to make as followers of Jesus to move from seeing people as objects of need and seeing ourselves as objects of having, to begin to see each other as fully human and therefore worthy of deep respect and dignity. But it's hard to let go of that identity of being a giver, and it's hard to release the identity of someone else as being the object of need. And one of the reasons I feel like it's hard is because we become vulnerable to having our heart broken really deeply. If it's our own roommate, someone in our family, someone in our community, our church, and we really let go of being the giver to deeply know what is their life like and what are they carrying, that can sometimes be almost too painful to bear. Because, as a friend of mine says, everybody carries a pool of tears. We go to another country, people are carrying a pool of tears. If we really let that touch us, it's hard to live with that. And I think we're in an American culture that's really good at distracting ourselves from accompanying real pain and suffering. But I think that is one of the greatest barriers to letting go of these identities as givers and then people as objects of need, because it will cost us our sense of having it all together. One of the images that I feel that is so profound an image to me is the image of the Lazarus and Dives story, how hard it was for the rich man the man who he saw is in deep need was just invisible to him. He was invisible to him. And I think sometimes it's a little easier for us to see who we know as the other to, in a sense, stay invisible. Because there's a great cost to us, to our protected hearts, when people become fully human. I don't know how to do that journey except in a community of people who encourage and support each other. It's not a solo journey. I just wonder if anyone could think of what are some questions that we could be asking ourselves in a way like, for example, doctors have a code of ethics, including do no harm, the Hippocratic Oath. Is that the right way to say that? I think it is. And I wonder, what should the principles be for those of us who are giving our lives to create more healing in the world? What might be some of those principles that we feel like we should ask ourselves before our interactions on the street with someone, before we take a missions trip, as we're considering our acts of charity and our engagement with justice? What should be some principles that we step back and make sure we're following? Yes?
What do we have in common with people that we're helping? And like how can we see God like in their eyes? Instead of like just, like you said, seeing ourselves as the giver. Like how do we relate to them?
Okay.
And what if we were in their shoes? What if we were the person that had the answer to help them?
Yeah. So what do we have in common in discovering what's in the other as opposed to projecting only? Yes?
Who does this benefit?
Great question. Great question. Yes?
Do no harm.
Do no harm. Yeah. Yeah. Yes?
Intentionally seek relationships.
Yeah. Great one. Anyone else? Things that you feel you want to have core for you as you're walking down the street, as you're thinking about things that you're part of. What do you feel like needs to be essential for you? Yeah.
Consider matters of the heart.
Consider matters of the heart. Anyone else? You know, when people do socially responsible giving, it means that a corporation has a series of things they commit not to do. And so in a way, it's like that. It's or a mutual fund that says, we won't invest in companies that carry out these certain activities or types of business. And so in a way, it seems to me the same kind of questions. Same kind of questions. Any others that you can think of? Yes?
What are the resources that they have that they could apply to the situation?
Great question. Great question. Yeah. Great point. Any others that feel absolutely essential for you?
I confess that this whole question about the resources, I think a lot of times it makes me feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think sometimes I have to honestly evaluate, am I wanting to do this good deed because it either makes me feel good or look good, or am I really thinking about the best way to address that need, which might not really have me visibly involved at all, but that doesn't get me sort of the emotional strokes or spiritual strokes that I might be looking for subconsciously.
Yeah. It's a great point. Yes?
Will my action promote mutual trust?
Great point. Yeah. Yeah. I wonder, we have just a little bit, we have about 10 minutes left. And first of all, thank you for the thoughtfulness of what you've shared here. I know this is the ethos of this university. And this conversation is not a new one. I just really appreciate the quality of what you've expressed. And I just wonder if there are any questions or challenges anyone here has in the last 10 minutes. Challenges for anything I've said where it just doesn't make sense, or challenges for each other. Yes?
Not a challenge,
Yeah.
it's a question.
Yeah.
One of your opening illustrations was your organization realized that helping one school was doing damage, so you started to think in terms of a network.
Yes.
I'm curious about the conversation that went on inside the organization to make that paradigm switch.
Yeah.
Because that seems to me very profound, and yet most organizations, when challenged like that, kind of go into an insular mode and say and get defensive and figure out ways
Yeah.
to justify what they're doing. And
Yeah.
so,
Well, we
to
did
me,
plenty of
was very
that.
profound. So I'm wondering what went on.
Yeah.
And what was the process?
I think that it's a great question, and of course, part of it was thinking, hey, we know what we're doing. So that was definitely part of it. But another was a founding principle of Beyond Borders as it grew out of EAP was following the Haitian proverb that, and I shared this the other day, that the rock in the water does not know the suffering of the rock in the sun. So we're always coming back to that anchoring principle, which is those who are impacted by injustice need to be both respected and have really a guiding voice. And so our Haitian colleagues started to discover the impact of this, and it led to lots of meetings and gatherings and retreats to say that if we don't change, we're both violating our founding principle, but we're also, we just have to be open to being wrong. So there were enough people who I think it's from years of trust that this conversation was able to happen. And enough people, we've tried to cultivate a culture of frankness and honesty. And we set up kind of a structure and process each year to look at what we do and examine what needs to be different. But I think it's our capacity to do that is because of some core principles that there are enough people in it that keep calling us back to that, even when pride is hurt. So, any other comments, questions, challenges for each other? Hopes? Yes.
Related to Drig's comment just now, and you say we, and I presume you mean Beyond Borders staff, and you talk about our Haitian. So there are indigenous people that are involved in these movements.
Exactly.
That you're mostly listening to because they are the dogs in the water. And so would they then take the word to the other 8 or 9 schools and say this is what we're going to do?
Yeah. It's part, we use a pretty intentional process and commitment to participatory learning and participatory engagement. So all our, and use popular education a lot. So, and try to really learn from the Freirean pedagogy of the oppressed. People are the subjects and not the objects. And so those gatherings in rural communities would be a gathering where all who are part of the community are invited to share together. We use something called open space technology, which is a way of creating a shared agenda and participatory action. And it's slow. And part of it is people who have not experienced having a voice, slowly gain a confidence and support to have a voice. And through that, what is needed kind of emerges. It just kind of emerges. And so we try to always have enough U.S. staff who's lived in Haiti a long time and experienced themselves, so we're constantly looking with new eyes. Questions, comments? We have a couple more minutes. Yes?
I just got back from a trip to Haiti. It was a missions trip.
Oh, nice.
And we were there to work.
Yes.
It wasn't in any way meant to be evangelical or anything. The missionary we went with explained the need for respect and everything like that in the culture.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we were told, you know, you shouldn't give to them, you'll be mobbed.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't really solve the problem.
Yeah.
It doesn't relieve your feelings toward real need.
No, it doesn't.
And I know there's a trip coming out from here next year or
Mm-hmm.
something, and I'm wondering if it would be helpful for you to comment on how should they respond. I'm still trying to,
Yeah.
processing all the, I even asked him, how does economy work? He said it doesn't work.
Yeah.
How do you do? How do you respond?
Thank you for asking that. And my short answer is, who really knows? My deeper answer is, first of all, can we not numb ourselves to the suffering of others? And I think that's probably the hardest task of our lives. And when we think about this trip coming up in May, the trip is going to be a different kind of mission trip. It's going to, and I won't say there's one that's good or bad. This is just a different kind. And this one we're going to spend time in a rural community where there's long relationships built with our Haitian colleagues and the community organizations. And we're going to do a lot of listening. And we're going to ask Haitians in rural communities those same questions. What is really helpful? I've asked people before. I've lived in a rural community myself and feel like I'm a beginner of learning about Haitian culture. And many people said that really the desire is for respect, appreciation, and dignity. And in some cases, the longing and the reaching out and asking for food is a form of just a desire to connect. And if conversations can happen over a longer time, that it moves from that kind of interaction to one that's more mutual. So that's part of it. That's part of it. But the trip will go on with the students here, and I'll be coordinating that trip. Will be one with staying in the homes of Haitian families in a rural community and sitting together in circles and asking these kind of questions and being willing to listen to the complexity of the responses and not try to wrap it up in a neat bow by the end. So it's a kind of a different experience. And but I think what you said, it just rings so true. It's almost unbearable to see, for me, to see children suffering from hunger in a world of abundance. It's so wrong. I just can't breathe when I think about that. What are ways that are helpful? What are ways that are transformative and not reinforcing in the systems we're part of?
I didn't see one overweight person in
Yeah.
Haiti other than missionaries.
Yeah.
And I didn't even see anybody smoke.
Yeah.
They couldn't afford stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. This is complicated. I feel like we don't need to go to Haiti to grapple with these questions. We could grapple with people in our own families, down the street, people we care about. And it feels like it's, again, looking through a new lens. But it's time to end. And thank you all for who you are here. Much appreciation.
Kim, thank you very much. Again, join us for lunch if you can, and the applications for the trip just mentioned are up here to my right. Thanks for coming.